Welcome in to the Unblocked podcast, Monday, November the 6th. I'm Keith here with Brian. Our regular coach is off today, but we're privileged to be joined by Coach Jon Cooper here. And as always, we're going to get into a great conversation with him. But before we get to that, just remember to interact with us on all the social media platforms, especially Twitter. But we're also on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, where you're going to be watching this video. Shoot us a message. Leave us a comment, ask us a question. We might get yours on one of our shows coming up soon. And we're always looking for listener questions. And we want to thank our friends Run and Try out on Hillcrest for sponsoring the show. Go see my guy Aaron. He'll take care of you for all your athletic needs there. So while we're here, let's get right into it. Jon, Brian, floor is yours.
Just want to introduce Coach Cooper. He spent 45 years coaching both at the high school level and the college level at Aurora College, Benedictine University, about to be inducted into the Benedictine University Hall of Fame here in December, which is a great honor, Coach. When did you realize you wanted to be a coach? Was there a moment or a time?
Well, I think I knew I wanted to be involved in football since I was 7 years old. I grew up in Chicago and loved pro football. I'm 7 years old. I'm following the Chicago Cardinals and Ollie Matson, who was my boyhood hero. That dates me. I understand that. And of course, I had the usual fantasy of a kid wanting to be a pro football player someday. And I learned early on I wasn't that kind of person. I didn't have the stature or the skill. I played high school and college football, and I thought I wanted to go into sports in some way. I had friends that, noticed my passion in football, and I often heard, you should be a coach. And I made the decision to do that right before my sophomore year in college. And I experienced three different head coaches when I was in college, and I learned a lot, from those experiences, through that. And so that's kind of what, got me where I really knew. I mean, it was kind of a progression, so to speak.
Now, you've had a Hall of Fame career. What are some of the most rewarding things about coaching as far as seeing old teams? I know you visit a lot of campuses, and you actually got to coach at the hometown of Ronald Reagan, I did find out.
Yeah, I was a head coach at Dixon High School, and that was an interesting experience, believe me. We didn't have a great amount of success. We had some good teams, but some really bad teams too. So it was a very up and down. I learned a lot from that. I was young, only 30 years old when I became a head coach, and became the defensive coordinator and assistant head coach at Aurora University, starting in 1986. But for me, coaching, rewarding thing about it was just seeing how your players develop as people. I'm in coaching for the relationships. It started for me. I didn't have a father for most of my childhood. My adoptive father left when I was 5. I later had a stepfather I wasn't close to, and he died less than 5 years after he came into my life. And that's one of the reasons I'm interested in Mike Gottfried's team focus so much is because of that. But anyway, coaches were like fathers to me, and I got a lot of guidance. Probably wouldn't have got into college if it wasn't for my high school coach. And going to bat for me, and I wanted to kind of give that back, and that was one of the main motivations. It might not have been my first motivation, but it became my main motivation. And I'm a big believer in providence, and a lot of young men came into my life that came from difficult situations that I could relate to, and I like to think we made a difference in their lives. In our coaching staffs, even the ones that had great family needed guidance, and I wanted our teams to be like family and have a common goal and look out for each other. I was blessed and an assistant to be in programs that where that was a priority. Helped me as a head coach. I tried to pass it on to assistant coaches and players, particularly the ones that wanted to go into coaching. I saw several former players of the game of Benedictine just recently going into coaching. It was just a great experience to do that. So. Those are the most rewarding things, that we had. Obviously, we won a lot of games at Benedictine and had some good success, but that's the bottom line. Is it's what you do for those kids, it's kind of a calling in some ways.
Now, who were some of your mentors? I know you were close to Jimmy Johnson, longtime assistant with Philadelphia Eagles. Who were some of your other mentors, Coach?
Well, I had several, and it all started with Dave McCarroll, my high school coach. He was a minister's son and a strong Christian. He was as tough as John Wayne, but he had a huge heart for his players. I wasn't a great player, but for some reason he took an interest in me as I didn't have a dad. He cared about us more as players and provided guidance. We were more than just players, and you could sense that in him. And he helped me with my faith. He helped me with my uh, academics. He went above and beyond. I wasn't a great student. I went to suburban high school full of future doctors and lawyers, and I kind of thought I was pretty stupid. And I finally figured out I wasn't my senior year. I started improving, but it was a struggle to get into college. I had my best friend and I. Neither one of us were great. Had great careers, class rank wise, coming out of that school. And he got his brother-in-law, or his brother was the AD at North Park College, and we were able to get into school after we went to other schools to take courses to get accepted, kind of like Rudy at Notre Dame. But we got in, and we were in Chicago, and we had a great experience, there. And my first job was with Jim Rexilius, who was a legendary Chicago area high school coach and also the brother-in-law of Dave McCarroll, and another strong Christian coach who was a tremendous mentor. And one of the things I learned from him, he emphasized to me as a young coach, coach every kid you have, even if they have no talent. He wanted all his players to be coached as if they were a starter. He told us to find something good to say about every kid, catch them doing something right. He used to stand by the locker room door and shake the hand of every player after every practice. I never saw anything like that in my life. He would tell some kid that was a backup that hardly ever played, he says, "Hey, that's the best I've seen you look today." And he was serious. And it was no accident, the numbers that he had in his program at Wheaton North. He also ran an FCA and went Fellowship of Christian Athletes and went above and beyond to help kids. I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I never saw anything like it in my life. I never saw so many people at a visitation. There were lines out in the street to get to the visitation, and he had such a tremendous impact on the kids and the people that he came into contact with. And when I first became a high school coach, I tried to be like Coach Rex, and I realized early on I'm not Coach Rex. I'm Coop. I'm Coach Coop, and I had to be Coach Coop. So it took me a while to realize that, but still, the lessons I learned from him and his brother-in-law, Coach Carroll, were things that I took with me in all my years of coaching.
Now, can you tell us when you went from high school to college, what was that leap like to Aurora?
We started a brand new program at Aurora. They hadn't had football since 1952, and we started in '86, and we were playing, some pretty good schools. St. Francis, had an NFL prospect on their team as a new NAIA program, and did they take us apart. Fortunately, it rained, and they couldn't beat us too bad. And I learned the difference in ebbs and flows between high school and college. You got 12-minute quarters in high school and 15-minute quarters in college. And I can remember these games are lasting forever. And these adjustments these people are making, I thought I had something that, no, they adjusted right away. And that was the biggest thing. And the guy that brought me out of that was Jim Johnson. I went to Jim Johnson and says, I went to a friend of mine. Hey, Jim Johnson will help you. He's great with that stuff. He was the St. Louis Cardinals defensive line coach at the time, and I went down, my old Chicago Cardinals, and I went down and spent some time with him, and he sat me down and he told me how to defend these different things and the one-back sets that we had been seeing in high school, and our friendship. I had met him, I knew him from before, but we became really good friends. During that time, we had a lot in common, a lot of mutual friends, and it was that he was the person that probably without him I'm not sure I survive as a college coach because I really learned a lot from the time I spent with him. Went out to the training camps, wherever he was at, I went to training camp, and that's how I got to know John Harbaugh through that.
Yeah, well, I know you've got a great relationship with John. He appreciates everything that you do for him. Then you went to Benedictine after Aurora. You in 2005, you took over a 1-9 program with 24 players. What do you do in that situation? I mean, you barely got enough to play, and you turned it around rather quickly too.
Well, it took a little. It took more than I'd like. We won 3 games that first year, and that was a miracle. And that first team was pretty special. We didn't get there till March. I had to hire a staff, and it was quite an experience. But I can remember, I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big believer in Providence, and Benedictine has a really nice faith community. And first full time day on the job, I get a call from the abbot from the abbey, and he says, "Coach, I'm praying for you every day, and you're going to need it." And so I'll never forget that, that call, and it made a real impression on me, and it made me really believe and feel like I was doing the right thing being there, and because there had been some trepidation, because a lot of people told me don't go to Benedictine. But we had great support from the administration. There had been some changes, and they built a beautiful facility, and eventually they put in a really nice weight room and made it a little easier to recruit. And we started to have some success, and we won that first championship in 2010 after competing for two of the years before that, almost getting in. And that was the first championship since 1935. And so that was, it wasn't all bad at Benedictine before that. There's some really great players and great coaches that went through that. Tom Beck, Bill Callahan, line coach with the Browns. He was a player, and Bill was great to me through all those years. He was with the Eagles for a while. He coached with John for a little while. And, Bill was a Benedictine alum, played quarterback there. And he never forgot where he came from. And so there were some great people at Benedictine. But those were some of the great memories of all the great people that I was associated with, through Benedictine. It helped that we won games.
You got to win. That's the name of the game. But now you're working for Ourlads NFL Scouting as an analyst and scout. What does a typical week look like for a scout? How much film do you watch? And what does Ourlads do, if you can share with the audience?
Sure. Well, I retired at age 66 from coaching, and for a number of reasons. Part of me wanted to continue, but a good friend of mine, Dan Shanka, is the owner of Ourlads Scouting Service, and Dan was a scout with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Dan is who got John Harbaugh into the NFL. Dan went to John Wooten, the personnel director, because he saw him, coaching in college. And he says, and John Wooten told him, "You see anybody that's a good college coach, and let us know, and we'll look at hiring." And that's how Sean Payton got into the NFL, is through Dan. And I knew Sean. I worked camps with him. Bill Callahan, he noticed him when he was at Wisconsin, and John Harbaugh. And Dan's very outgoing, great personality, and he left full-time scouting and bought the company Ourlads from Tom Hepler, who I knew. And I got to know Dan when he was a scout, and I was at Aurora, and we had a really good running back, and he came to scout him. And I had told him about Ourlads, and because Ourlads started in 1983 as a mimeograph sheet passed out at the NFL draft by Tom Hepler and his son, who was the original owner. And then he started to put a book out. He sent the book to colleges, and he looked for help from college coaches. And being a college coach, I gave him some help. I was very interested in the NFL draft, and Jim Johnson encouraged that because he really loved Ourlads. He used to call up and say every year, "Where's my catalog?" He called it his catalog of college players. And Dan decided when Tom retired, Dan decided to buy the company from Tom. And it was really interesting because Dan kept bugging me, "When you retire, I need you. When you retire, I need you." And sure enough, I retired. I went back to work for Dan in 2016. And Dan had bought the company in 2005, and he really turned it into something. They were doing the East-West Shrine Bowl at the time. They started that up, and he was working with some teams. Dan had a stroke in 2021. And that kind of changed things a little bit for Dan. He's back working again, but we don't do much with NFL teams. We do a lot with media. We got a real strong website, Ourlads.com, where you can. And the big thing there is the NFL depth charts and the college depth charts. We've got every college and every NFL team updated almost hourly, it seems like, by a number of people that are involved in that. And uh, so Dan and his wife Peggy are running it from out in Arizona, and I'm the associate general manager now, so I'm supposed to be retired. But we enjoy it. We've got some scouts, some guys that are working for us, mostly part time, and we've had veteran NFL scouts come in and out of the organization over the years, and so it's a pretty good group. We're kind of old school scouting, watch the film and write reports. The analytics are there, but we've got a guy that does some of that stuff, but we're still pretty old school in terms of how we evaluate players. And for me, we start in the summer, looking at last year's film, and then we put out a preview and we work pretty hard at it. And now it's a little slow right now, and it will be until we start getting a lot of this year's game tape. And we put out a preview online that's on our website, and that went out about 2 weeks ago. It's just got some stacks and some snippet reports on some of the players. Most, probably about 25 to 30 at each position, are ranked, preliminary rankings, and then we start, getting after it. And anybody who wants to hire us to do anything for the media, and then we do radio shows and things of that nature, and then we start working on that draft guide pretty much in December, and that comes out in April. It's a big book. We're one of the last companies that puts out a scouting book, an actual book. And we've got a lot of old school subscribers, coaches, different people that they want a book in their hands. They don't want to look on websites. And that's where we come in, I guess. But we still like the websites, and we're putting a lot of our stuff on the website too. You click on a player on the depth chart, an NFL team, and you'll probably find a scouting report from one of our guides, from previous years that is attached to that, linked to that. So that's there are certain times of year it's really busy, and certain times of years it's slow. And you get into February, March, and April, it's crazy.
Yeah, I imagine.
And then the early fall, like it was crazy up until get into November, it slows down a little bit.
Well, you and Phil Steele, the only people still putting out print.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about doing it. I've got there's an announcer for an NFL team that does I don't know if I should give you his name, but he's very old, and he's been doing it for years and years and years. And he called me up and I said, well, you can go on the web. How come I can't call Peggy anymore and get my guides? And I said, well, we're trying to do it online. We're getting away from the phone. 1-800-PRO-DRAFT, we eliminated that phone. And so you just go on the website. I don't use websites. So we had to work out a deal where he could send us a check, and he orders 500 books for a big draft party he puts on every year. And wow. So we take care of them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. There's still, a lot of people doing that.
Now, a lot of people, I know you and I have talked about it, this is going to be a very big draft for quarterbacks, or it appears to be at this point a big draft for quarterbacks. How do you have them ranked, if you don't mind sharing with us? The guys that will be draft eligible. Look,
we're probably a little different, than maybe what some teams are doing, right now. We really like Caleb Williams still, in spite of the he's had I want to see this month how he plays, because I thought the Notre Dame game, they came out with some coverages, that were a little unique. They had some different levels in terms of how they were handling flat coverage, and they had 5 guys back there and giving him fits in terms of reading. Very good coverage disguise, and he didn't respond well. I don't know if I'm going to blame him for that, and they may not have been prepared for that type of thing, but it was something that concerned us a little bit. And I know one of the guys in our scouts, one of our other guys, he didn't want to have, he wanted to knock him out of number one, based on that. And I said, let's hold off on that. Let's see how he does. He's playing some really good teams the next month. The thing I like about him, that extemporaneous ability to move the ball on, to throw on the move, to different arm slots, kind of Pat Mahomes like. So he does some things that are really special that you can't teach, in terms of his ability to deliver accurate passes from different arm slots. And so that's, a strength. He's mobile. He's got great arm strength from, again, those, throwing on the move, throwing off balance and different things. He's a strong kid. He's not real tall. So, we still like him as number one. The kid that we like next, probably, and again, we want to see the rest of the season, but Dan Shanka loves Jaden Daniels from LSU. And right now, we've got him as our number 2 quarterback on that list, and we know we're going to be unique in that regard. But the thing that we've tried to do is we're going to rank the player not so much how we think they're going to be drafted, but how we think they're going to be as a pro. Because if you look over the years, how many quarterbacks have not, that are the number one guy, have not ended up being the best pro, and vice versa? How many guys are drafted late? A guy last year that I absolutely loved, and he's a local kid, a great kid, great family, great work ethic. One of my former players, who's also coaches at Aurora, has worked with him in that Throw It Deep, Christensen's group. He works for them. Aiden O'Connell, who just started for the Raiders, and we really liked him. In fact, I regret that we didn't rank him higher than we did, because we really believed he was going to be a very solid quarterback, and I think he's going to be a very good pro before it's over. As you can see, he's already had one game under his belt, as a start, pretty well. But wait and see. The old scout once told me, you really don't know what you've got until you get those guys in your building. You really don't know. How is Bryce Young going to respond to what's happening to him in Carolina right now? We had C.J. Stroud as our number 1 last year, and we stuck with that pretty much all the way through. So we'll see, where it goes. Drake May from North Carolina is an outstanding quarterback, and he could be the number 1 guy before it's over as far as how they're ranked. We really like him. Shader Sanders, I don't think he's going to come out, but he looks awful good. He didn't make a lot of mistakes, and let's see how he does. I don't think Deion brought him there to stay there for 1 year, but you never know. Michael Penix Jr. was a guy that I wanted to see how he did this year. Our guys felt the same way about him, and he has exceeded our expectations. And we think there's 5 quarterbacks right there that in our top 5 that we think any one of those guys could be a first-round pick, and any one of those guys could be the best one in the bunch, even though they're not drafted in the top, as the top 10 quarterback or the first guy. So, and Quinn Ewers from Texas, another guy we like. Going down the line, Bo Nix from Oregon. I know a lot of people don't like him. We still do. J.J. McCarthy has improved dramatically this year in his accuracy. He's a kid we like.
How many typically
has accuracy issues, but he's an athlete.
How many quarterbacks are typically taken in the first 5 rounds versus what could be this year?
That's hard to say. I think
first
you're
4
looking
rounds.
about 17, 18 drafted, and maybe about 7 or 8 in the first 5, maybe 10. Last year was a little bit less because it wasn't the greatest year for quarterbacks. But I thought there were a lot of good potential quarterbacks that had some flaws, some things that if you want to nitpick, you could say, hey, this is wrong, and we're not going to draft them that high. But there were a lot of quarterbacks drafted last year, not real high. Once you get past that top 4 guys, they didn't go off the board very fast after that. Then all of a sudden, you get into that 4th round, they're starting to go. So every year is different. This year I think you may see some of these guys, you may see 8, 9, 10 of them in the first 3 rounds. Just depends on who needs a quarterback.
A lot of teams with everybody starting now. They're all starting backups. Everybody's injured in the NFL. So
Yeah, that's the truth too. And
that's
everybody needs a third quarterback now that they can put on
now
the
that they've
field.
got the emergency quarterback, it
Yes,
makes a
everybody's
big
got to
difference.
have that guy, which is, I think, one of the reasons why you saw so many guys that some of these guys got signed as free agents too that we thought were going to get drafted.
Yeah.
You know, so but yeah, it's a good group. Jordan Travis, Florida State, as a kid that's come on, and obviously Florida State's playing real well. Joe Milton of Tennessee, big kid, tall. So yeah, it's a. I like this group of quarterbacks.
Well, Coach, we're going to ask you to stay on, and anytime you've got anything, you're subbing for Coach Riley. So anytime you've got anything, just interrupt us. Keath is going to go over the Big 10 and Big 12. We just do the Power 5 conferences real quick, and
yeah, we'll get right into it then. In the Big 12, there was a lot of good action. On our Friday show, I was saying the one thing teams need to not do is overlook going into the rest of the season, especially, Kansas and Iowa State, Texas and Kansas State, especially, and then that winner of the Oklahoma State game in Bedlam. Oklahoma State came out and really showed they do belong in this Big 12, and they do have the easier path now going forward as far as getting into that Big 12 championship game with currently Texas. Texas kind of left it a bit of a scare out there against Kansas State, and Kansas, again, just squeaking by Iowa State by a score. So, again, a lot of teams that got to stay focused going down this stretch of the season. And, again, now you got Kansas as a 2-loss in conference and Oklahoma as a 2-loss in conference. A lot can happen still, and these teams are going to still have other challenges to play. In the Big Ten, my whole focus was on the Illini. They pulled out a very interesting win over the Golden Gophers. And as I also predicted for all the Big Ten sickos out there, Iowa and Northwestern delivered everything you'd hoped it would. But the real eyes were kind of on Michigan and Ohio State. Ohio State had no issue with Rutgers. Michigan had no issue with Purdue. Again, all things aside, what's going on, everything's lining up for those two to play each other in that final game to see who goes to that Big Ten championship game. Michigan still has to get over a pesky little Penn State hump, which put up 51 on Maryland over the weekend. So a couple shocks, though. Michigan State gets its first Big Ten win, and Wisconsin is just falling off the radar. They lost to Indiana 20-14. So again, a lot more to play, but Big Ten is kind of shaping up, especially in the East, like we figured it would. But Big 12 is going to be fun to watch going forward. Brian, what about you? Got anything for the ACC and Pac-12?
ACC, Florida State started slow against Pitt, but came on in the second half and took care of business. Louisville took care of Virginia Tech. It looks like a two-person race right now between FSU and Louisville. Clemson, Notre Dame. Tyler from Spartanburg should get the game ball from Dabo Swinney. He's got him fired up this week, and got Clemson playing a lot better. UNC defeated Campbell, which we kind of predicted that one would be pretty ugly. NC State beat Miami. Miami's struggling right now. I think they play Florida State this week, so we'll see what happens there. Pac-12, Washington. I'll tell you, they're in the driver's seat after downing USC. USC fires Alex Grinch. Oregon destroyed Cal 63-19. I think Oregon's one of those teams where nobody really would want to play them at this point, but that could be a two-people race as well in the Pac-12. Oregon State defeats Colorado. Colorado fires their offensive coordinator after averaging 408 yards and finishes for a total of 238 yards with Pat Schumer calling the plays. So don't know if that was what's going to happen. You usually don't see those in-season coach. You don't see too many in-season coordinator fires, but there's been two of them out there in the Pac-12 now, so we'll see what happens. Utah pounded Arizona State. Stanford gets by Washington State, and Arizona, Coach Fish is doing an excellent job, shut down UCLA completely. So that's what I've got. And then the SEC, obviously, UGA defeated Bama 30-20, UGA defeated Missouri 30-21. That was a pretty good game to watch. Ole Miss Downs A&M. Jimbo might be on the hot seat. As I'd have to think if they can come up with the money. That Twitter was a pretty bad reaction towards that loss. Tennessee beats UConn. Arkansas defeats Florida in overtime. I've got Auburn runs over Vandy. Kentucky beats Mississippi State. And then probably the best game was LSU defeated in Tuscaloosa. Those two quarterbacks, Milroe and Daniels, who Coach talked about. That was really an exciting game. Bama just got enough stops in the third quarter to kind of take that 14-point lead. And when Daniels went out, Nessmeyer couldn't get the ball moving quite as well as Daniels. But that was a great game by two quarterbacks, Coach. Did you watch that?
Watched part of it. I've got it taped. I'm going to eventually get around to watching the whole thing. I was watching some Big Ten football.
Which games did you enjoy? Did you watch Ohio State Rutgers? Ohio State struggled a little bit in the first half.
That. But I also watched. My grandson goes to Iowa. He's not an athlete, but he goes. He's a big Iowa fan, so I watched Iowa and Minnesota with interest. Iowa and Minnesota, Iowa and Northwestern. And I grew up being a big Northwestern fan, and so it was in Wrigley Field. So
they had some problems with the pitcher's mound. That's what I watched.
They did.
Big problems with the pitcher. It was kind of embarrassing that they were going out there with.
It really
went out multiple times. I think 2 or 3 times they were out there trying to cover it up.
I couldn't believe how deep the mud was, or the dirt was in some of those spots. Somebody could broke their ankle on that.
Yeah, it really surprised me that they weren't more ready for the game as far as field conditions. So kind of embarrassing.
Minnesota, I watched that too. That was
That was a fun game. It was. Kind of crazy ending there.
In the NFL, Chiefs defeated Miami. Steve Spagnuolo came up with a great game plan and held Miami to 14 points. The Ravens crushed the Seahawks 37-3. I know Coach and I both watched that. We were texting during it. Browns shut out the Cardinals 27-0. Texans C.J. Stroud with another great game and a victory. The thing that really stuck out to me, though, on the NFL was Josh Dobbs coming in for the Vikings and practicing the snap count on the sideline so the offensive lineman could hear him. I've never, ever seen such a thing, Coach, and I think he finished like 20 or 30 for 160 yards or so and 2 touchdowns. I've never seen a guy, and they said he didn't take hardly any snaps during the week. I guess they're drawing plays in the dirt. Did you ever have a situation like that, Coach? That emergency quarterback had to be used?
Yeah, well, no, but I've had emergency kickers.
Emergency kickers?
We had a kicker one time headbutted at an extra point and got a concussion. And we had to try out kickers at halftime to see if we had anybody that could kick.
Whatever works, but I've never seen that in an NFL game where they're practicing the cadence on the sideline. I just thought to myself, there's no way they can win this game, and obviously they ended up pulling it out.
That was amazing. That was great to see.
So,
really was.
And then the Raiders got a big win for Antonio Pierce in his first game. We talked about Aiden O'Connell had a really good game. Dallas-Philly was a great game. Dallas actually had the ball down on the 6-yard line. I don't know if either of you watched any of that, but a couple penalties and a couple sacks and didn't get a chance for the win. But Dallas, I thought, played one of their best games of the year. They had trouble stopping Philly, though, in the second half. So, and then we got Chargers and Jets going tonight. And then, Keith, you went to a game this week. You begged for a ticket from a Saints fan. Can you tell us about your experience over there? That's 2 weeks in a row you've seen the Bears on the road.
Yep, went to L.A. and then went over to – I haven't missed a game in New Orleans between the Bears and the Saints since 2005, so I figured why not just go for it. And I just kind of put out a little pity thing, see if anyone wanted to give me a free ticket. Tickets were getting was like $50, but I had a friend come through, some nice tickets on the lower level. But it's same old, same old. It's rookie quarterback, one thing I can tell you is watching that is Bajent. He'll be in the NFL for a while. I think he might not be a starter, but I think he definitely showed people that he can process, he can be a reliable backup, and he can come in and manage a game. I think he's a rookie. It looks like you watch a lot of those throws and everything. I listened to the post game on the ESPN app, but everything looked just the throws he needed to really get in there with a little bit of juice on the ball just were a little slow and a little behind, and that allowed those New Orleans cornerbacks to just feast on it all day.
Coach liked him coming out of college, didn't you, Coach? Didn't you tell me
Yeah,
that?
we thought he was draftable, but we also thought that he was going to take some work, because coming out of Division II, having coached at a lower level, and then watched a lot of NFL football, things happen so much faster. I mean, the reactions are quicker, the windows are much tighter than you're going to find at the lower level. I mean, I've seen some really good lower level quarterbacks that I thought had those kind of tools, but can you develop the processing ability to not, that message to the brain and the arm, get that ball out quick enough so that you can get it in that tight window? Can you throw somebody open in man coverage too? So you got your accuracy, your ball placement has to be, very precise and much more precise in the NFL than it's going to be at the college level. And for sure, when you're going down a level to Division II, it's going to be an issue. But I believe he could develop those skills because he's a fairly good-sized kid. He's mobile. He's got a quick release. And I think the kid can develop to at least to being a good number 2, if nothing else. But I wouldn't necessarily say he can't be a starter in the league. But
Again,
we'll
just
see.
time and experience is what it's going to take.
Yeah,
and
right, exactly. And being in the right place. Being at the right place at the right time.
Short turnaround. Thursday night game, Justin Fields may be back, may not be. They haven't ruled him out yet. It's kind of sounds like he's still highly questionable with his grip strength. And two camps are, get him back in there, let him play if he wants to. But at the same time, you need to finish evaluating him. We got 7 games left, and if it means we only get to see him for 6 more, but he's at 100% for those 6 because this is a big decision. Brian was talking about quarterbacks in the draft. The Bears have a very high draft pick, maybe 2 coming up, and they need to have an absolute yes or no. And then again, I imagine we'll probably be getting a new coach as well. And in my opinion, that is a decision that whoever you bring in as your next coaching staff, you need to let them make a decision on how they want to move forward. Do they maybe want to? We still got Fields for another year on his rookie deal. Maybe they just say we don't extend him, but we want to keep him and draft someone. And then you got Bajent, Fields, and whoever new. I don't know, but that there's coaches out there who are going to get paid a whole lot more money to make these decisions than I can. So we'll see where it goes from there. But I think it starts with, especially with the Bears, who's going to coach the team next year needs to be the number one question. And if Justin Fields can show he's the guy in these next games, then it helps that new coach make a decision.
Is the general manager safe, Keith?
Oh,
what
Ryan
does Waddle
Poles
and Sylvie think? He's safe?
Yeah, no, Ryan Poles, I mean, he's only in his second year here. He tore it down to the studs last year, and now he's got to start making moves. And he said, and if you kind of read between the lines, he said this is not a quick fix. This is multiple drafts to get to where we need to be. And I think he said multiple drafts to where we need to be because he's going to be drafting little by little to start. And then when he can actually, Eberflus thing, Eberflus had already been interviewed by the Bears, and he was the front office's main target before Ryan Poles was hired. So there's always the question is how much of that influence did Poles have in hiring him? Of course, in the public, in the press conference, he's going to say, yeah, it was my hire. This was my choice. But was it really is the question that will probably never get answered. But
the thing that, with Fields, I think the thing that bothered me about him early on was his slow processing. That's something that, either your offense is going to have to be geared to more design quarterback runs and those kinds of things and doing things on the move, or you're going to have to find out, if your offense is one that wants a certain type of quarterback, then if Fields doesn't fit that mold, one of the things that bothers me, if you let Eberflus go, then you've got another system that comes in, and is that in the best interest of Justin Fields? And if another guy coach comes in, good chance he'll want one of those top quarterbacks if they really like one of those guys. So it's kind of an unfortunate situation for Fields that he's had different systems, and that's what happened to Trubisky, and that's where a lot of quarterbacks get caught and never get the opportunity to get into one system that is good for them.
Yep.
But hey, there's still, and that's why there's a lot of players every year that come into the league.
Well, not for long for a reason. Yep. NFL not for long.
NFL, right?
They don't have a lot of patience, so
it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, we'll move off the games that were played, and we'll talk about what's going to be announced tomorrow is the updated college football playoff rankings. Last week was the first ranking release. It was Georgia, Michigan, or Ohio. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the AP Top 25. It was, hang on a sec, let me switch this over.
Ohio State 1, Georgia 2.
Ohio State was 1.
Michigan 3, FSU 4. And then Washington.
See. That's right. And then, but
you guys,
again, everyone, I don't think anybody's going to change because nobody lost.
Do you see any changes?
I don't see any.
I still think I'd have Georgia 1, though, personally. That's what I'd put because they beat a better Missouri team than Rutgers, but we'll see. They do change from week to week sometimes in the history, so we'll see how it clears up. But
the only thing I can see changing is if it's Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, that'll stay the same. In the 5, 6, 7, 8 range, Oklahoma's at 9, they'll drop off. Alabama at 8, Texas at 7. It's getting questionable. You can't put Alabama ahead of Texas because they beat each other, and Washington is ahead of Oregon because they beat each other. Maybe you move Texas up a little bit, but I don't know. But I think everything just kind of stays put as far as at least the top 8 go. But
if you're going to lose, you need to lose early like Alabama. I just think going to be by the end of it. I think they'll be the number one-loss team going into the SEC championship.
Yeah, you got Oregon, Texas, and Alabama are the one-loss teams. I guess the only sense you can make of it, why they have it this way, is Oregon's loss was better than Texas's and Alabama's because they lost to number 5, and then you can't put Texas behind Alabama. I don't know.
We'll see tomorrow night. So
yep,
it'll all become clear.
All right. Well, that's about it. Anybody else got anything? John, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. And you see my old buddy, Coach Andriano or Coach Boo. Tell him you met Keith. Yeah, absolutely. Class of 2000 at Montini. It was a great experience, and I'm one of the few that came down south and went to Spring Hill College. And then I gave up on the cold weather. You guys can have that. I'll visit the family in the summertime, but I can go to a ball game.
He's in a stocking cap, Coach, and it's about 75 degrees in Mobile. So
absolutely,
you get an idea.
I just got a nice clean buzz cut, so my head's a little chilly adjusting. But yeah. Well, if we don't got anything else, I'll just go ahead and wrap it up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Yeah, John, thanks for sticking with us. And if you've got any questions or you want to get a question for John in, we can get it to him. Interact with us on the social media networks, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube. Twitter will be the best place to get us. Also, you can send us an email at unblockedpod@gmail.com if you got a question or a business or something you want mentioned on here. Like my buddy Friesmeyer at Run and Try on Hillcrest. He'll get you all taken care of. And I'm Keith for Coach John and Brian. We'll see you next time on the Unblocked podcast. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.